The rich get richer. That's not breaking news, but this is. The top free agent is off the board in Major League Baseball. All-star outfielder Kyle Tucker is in agreement with the back-to-back World Series champion Dodgers on a 4-year deal worth $240 million, which would work out to be $60 million AAV. It includes an opt-out after year 2. Tucker, who turns 29 years old on Saturday, was also fielding offers from both the Mets and Blue Jays. He's one of the best left-handed bats in baseball. He's hit at least 20 homers in 5 straight seasons, but he has dealt with injuries the past 2 years. Get some instant analysis. Welcome in former MLB Executive of the Year and CBS Sports baseball insider Jim Bowden. The Dodgers, again, here we are again, talking about the Dodgers swinging a big deal. Your reaction is what to landing Kyle Tucker?
Yeah, so as we watched the Dodgers won their second consecutive World Series and we looked at their team and we said in the offseason, what are the 2 biggest weaknesses that the Dodgers had last year, right? Number one, they didn't have an impact closer. Well, they went out and they got Edwin Diaz in free agency this offseason. He was just the best closer in the National League last year. The other big need they had was improving the defense in right field. Teoscar Hernandez, well below average defensively. And we saw that in the playoffs and the World Series. So what they do, they went out and got Kyle Tucker, the #1 free agent in this entire class. This is a player at 29 years old in his prime. 30 homers, 30 steals is what he's averages. That's what he is. Plus defender in right field, plus base runner, plus arm. So the Dodgers basically look at their team that won 2 straight world championships, Akeem, and they said, look, we had 2 little weaknesses, right? And we just fixed it with the best free agent right fielder and the best closer that was available in this marketplace. And at the same time, how did they do it? They just outspent the Mets. They outspent the Blue Jays and all the competition. The Mets had offered $50 million a year times 4 years. The Dodgers came in and said, yeah, okay, we'll offer 60 times 4. Sit down, shut up. We have Tucker, you don't.
Look, I mean, Steve Cohen just tweeted that there was smoke. Clearly there was smoke in Los Angeles, not in New York. What more can you tell us about how this deal came together? Because we didn't hear the Dodgers. It's like they're just lurking, right? All of a sudden, we hear about the Dodgers at the last second. We had heard that it was a 2-team race. There was Toronto and the New York Mets.
Yeah, that's how the Dodgers operate, right? They're always stealth. That's how they like to operate. Andrew Friedman, the president of the Dodgers, has a long history of that. And look, the Blue Jays, according to our sources, they had the longest term offer on the table for Kyle Tucker. And the Mets, they made their offers public. They leaked out the numbers. Why they did that, I'm not quite sure. But I want you to keep in mind, the New York Yankees made the opinion they don't think Tucker could succeed in New York. They thought he would succeed in LA or Toronto, but they weren't sure that this was a good fit for New York. I guess the Mets felt differently, and it would have been fascinating if he signed with New York, how that would have played out. But even his former teammates in Houston kept telling me, I can't see him signing with the Mets. I think he's going to probably sign with Toronto. But what happened here is the Dodgers do what they do. They paid a luxury tax this offseason, which is more money than 16 teams' entire player payroll. And they sat there and they said, look, we're making so much money. Let's just go overspend. Let's make an offer so good for Kyle Tucker he can't say no. And that's what they did. Nobody's close to $60 million a year. That's $10 million or more than the Mets offered. So the Dodgers just yawned it out. They waited the whole offseason and they said our 2 biggest needs, a closer and an impact right fielder. They got both, and now they are set up. Clearly the favorites in Vegas, Akeem, to win their 3rd World Series in a row. And I'll be honest with you, when we get done this hit, I am going to go online. I am going to book my hotel for the World Series next year in Los Angeles.
Okay. All right. That's fine. You can get ahead of that. I mean, they have the shortest odds to win the World Series for a 3rd year in a row. Look, when you look at the Dodgers lineup, where does Tucker fit and where are you slotting him in?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the good thing about Tucker and the important thing about with Tucker is that he's 29 years old, because this is an aging roster, right? Freddie Freeman is now 35. Mookie Betts is now 32. So I think we're going to put Kyle Tucker either in the 2 spot or the 3 spot. I think at Freddie Freeman's age, it's okay if we drop him down a spot or 2. So maybe we end up going Ohtani, Betts, Tucker, Freeman, something like that. Maybe even put Will Smith in between Freeman and Tucker. But it's somewhere in there. I mean, look, you know what you're getting with Kyle Tucker, plus defense in right field, 30 homers, 30 steals. And by the way, the other thing that's great about this spot for Tucker is he doesn't have to be the headliner. He's not going to be on the cover of the media guide or the yearbook. He's not going to be on the front of the iPad, or he's not going to be on the billboard. That's not what he is. That's for Ohtani. That's for Freeman and Betts and Yamamoto. Kyle Tucker can just be a support player at $60 million a year.
It must be nice to pay somebody $60 million a year and have the roster that you have. They're the Monstars, except these Monstars don't lose in this real-life movie and the reality that we live in. The reality for other teams like the New York Mets, where do they go from here? Because they still need a bat. Bo Bichette's still on the market. Cody Bellinger is still on the market. We saw Steve Cohen again tweet that there was smoke and making a Pope reference that maybe something was near, that a deal was close with Kyle Tucker. Instead, he heads to L.A. So where do the Mets go from here?
4th place. I think the Marlins can go by them this year. I do. I mean, I'm not sure I understand what David Stearns is doing outside of the fact he's trying to make the Mets the Milwaukee Mets, and he's trying to win in New York the way he did in Milwaukee, and I just don't think that's going to work. I got to be honest with you. I mean, let's be realistic of where they went. They went from the 38 homers that Pete Alonso delivers to 20 homers of Polanco. They didn't like Alonso's defense, apparently, even though he was great at scooping and picking at first base. Instead, they want Polanco to play first base, who's played 1 inning of 1 game in his entire Major League career there. They moved on for Brandon Nimmo, who hit 28 homers last year, and they bring in Marcus Semien, who's 35 years old. The age in decline is catching up to him. So I'm not quite sure I understand what they're trying to do. They've lost out on every starting pitcher so far on the open market in both trades and free agency. So do they pivot now to Framber Valdez, perhaps? Do they pivot to Bellinger? I don't think so. So I'm really not sure what the plan is there, outside of the fact that I think David Stearns wants to build a team around Carson Binge and Jet Williams and Nolan McLean and Jonah Tong, and be young and grow it and be young. But here's the problem. The Braves and the Phillies are in your division, and they are way better teams than you are right now. And now that you lost out on Tucker, it's going to be tough to overcome it regardless of what you're going to do. My understanding is the Phillies are pretty close to signing Bo Bichette. And by the way, Toronto might pivot after losing out on Tucker. They might up their offer Bichette to try to get that deal closed. So that's something to watch. I can't see the Mets jumping in here and getting Bichette. So I'm not really sure what David Stearns is going to be able to do outside of the fact that this is a team that is not going to be projected as a playoff team by most analysts that are covering the sport.
Well, the Mets offseason has been defined by subtraction, then addition, in an offseason where they needed to add, and instead they continue to subtract and detract because their fans are none too pleased. And you know that we have a lot here at CBS Sports HQ, and they're just not sure where they're going. And I get the frustration. Now that the domino has fallen with Kyle Tucker here, Jim, what does this mean for Cody Bellinger and his market?
Yeah, so the New York Yankees want to bring Bellinger back. GM Brian Cashman has been very clear this entire offseason that that is his number one priority. They have offered him a 5-year deal at $32 million a year. He has turned that down. His representatives, Scott Boras and the Boras Corporation, are looking for 7 or 8 years. Brian Cashman has been open-minded in giving him an opt-out to try to get him to sign, but they're not going to 7 or 8 years. So the question is, does the Boras Corporation have 7 or 8 years from anybody? And if they do, Cody Bellinger will sign there because Scott Boras will want to prove a point to the New York Yankees. But if he doesn't have it there, I think he goes back to the Yankees and they work out this deal. And, you know, I think it helps the Yankees that Tucker's signing for 4 years. because Bregman signed for 5, Schwarber signed for 5, Alonso signed for 5. Why should Bellinger get 7 or 8? Suarez signed for 5. I can go on and on. So I think at the end of the day, Bellinger's going to go back to the New York Yankees. That would be my guess. But look, the one thing I don't know, maybe Steve Cohen's going to react to losing Tucker and turn around and give Bellinger the 7 or 8 year deal. I don't know. Anybody can do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to figure out that they've got to respond now. I mean, this is you're losing another player. They lost Edwin Diaz to the Dodgers. The Mets now losing Kyle Tucker to the Dodgers. Kyle Tucker headed to L.A. on a massive 4-year, $240 million deal. Jim Bowden with the very latest here on CBS Sports HQ. Jim, thank you.
Thanks, Akeem.
This is incredible for the Dodgers. Look, if you're a baseball fan, you're going, the bleeping Dodgers again? Like, that's what you're saying. You're going, come on. Like, all the guys they have, do they need more? Yeah, they want to win 3 in a row. They're a dynasty. As you take a look at the highest paid players in Major League Baseball based on average annual value. Now, Shohei Ohtani has some deferrals, so this is just for the sake of the argument, $70 million per season. And right behind him is his new teammate, Kyle Tucker, at $60 million AAV. Could have been teammates with Juan Soto, instead taking his talents out to LA. Again, a 4-year, $240 million deal. Opt out after year 2, as our Jim Bowden confirmed here on CBS Sports HQ. Coming up, plenty more reaction ahead. Kyle Tucker on his way to Los Angeles on yet another massive deal for the back-to-back champs. And for more, welcome in A's broadcaster, my friend Dallas Braden, one of only 24 pitchers in MLB history to throw a perfect game. Dallas, here we are again, my friend. It's the Dodgers swooping in and getting another big-name free agent. They already took away Edwin Diaz from the Mets. Now they take Kyle Tucker away from the Mets as he signs a massive deal. Your reaction is what?
Has there ever been a product that sells itself any better than Hollywood? And mainly the Dodgers at this point, because I'm not quite sure how much courting was necessary outside of, you want to come to Hollywood? You want to come hit in this lineup? You want to come hit behind this staff? The answer to those questions clearly were a resounding yes. Akeem, we'll start here. It was years ago on our podcast when I was essentially laughed at for talking about us as an industry being on the precipice, being right on the brink of a $50 million a year type player. And who that player was, what that looked like, I said remained to be seen. There were rumors about that. Could that be Mike Trout? I mean, there were guys like DeGrom that signed big extensions for $30+ million a year. Mike Trout, who signed extensions for $30+ million a year. Miguel Cabrera back in 2014. I mean, there were names, right, that were popping up. Garrett Cole, $36 million in 2019. So you knew that we were creeping to this point. But now here we are, Kyle Tucker, and rumor has it that there was a lengthy deal on the table from the folks up north in Toronto. A lengthy deal, somewhere around the neighborhood of possibly 10 years. If that's the case, could you imagine being able to come even close to what that AAV may have been in a 10-year stretch with just a 4-year offer? And that's exactly what the Los Angeles Dodgers just did. At $60 million a year, 240 total. There is an opt-out after year 2. Kyle Tucker is now a Los Angeles Dodger. And I think the marriage between the two was really something that was just sort of discussed and volleyed about, almost as an afterthought, just sort of tickling and teasing the baseball fans' mind, because what if, right? What if? Like, could that be a possibility? Here we are. Here we are, Hakeem. Kyle Tucker is sandwiched now in the middle of best lineup in baseball. And what's funny is this is a team who has won the World Series in back-to-back years. They are defending champs 2 times, and they have gotten better. That's really tough to do. That is a difficult task to complete, regardless of where you finished at in the season prior, especially if you find yourself in the big dance at the end of it all. To think that you are going to say goodbye, as they did, to a Hall of Famer in Clayton Kershaw. There's players that have left, but they have just gotten better. And now you add, arguably, and I think undoubtedly at this point, the most coveted free agent bat on the market. I mean, it was Kyle Schwarber, it was Kyle Tucker, it was Alex Bregman. Schwarber found a home very early. I don't think anybody doubted he wasn't headed back to the city of brotherly love. Alex Bregman and the debacle that occurred between he and Boston, not he and Boston, but essentially Boston fumbling the Bregman bag. And now Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker is a Los Angeles Dodger. Wouldn't you like to hit in between Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman or Will Smith or Shohei Ohtani or Max Muncy or Teoscar Hernandez? I mean, the list goes on and on and on, Hakeem. This is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, he could have hit between Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto, but now he's going to hit between a couple of guys in L.A. And what's wild, to your point about the AAV, they're going to pay a guy $60 million AAV, and he's not even the best player on his team. Like, if you
he might not be the third best.
Right.
He might not be the third or fourth best player on that team. I mean, let's just be honest. That's not a knock on Kyle Tucker. Let's not forget that they have 3 offensive caliber MVPs in that lineup still, before you ever get to Kyle Tucker's name, right? And that's something else that we talked about was, is this, and I don't want to use the word indictment, I think maybe is this insight into the personality of Kyle Tucker? Because if you have a lengthy deal on the table, basically a decade's worth of commitment to you, and there's a competitive AAV that's being offered as well, large lump sum, does it benefit you to go that route? Maybe it does. The only resistance that you might have is if that deal gets cut in half lengthwise and there's not such a gap in the compensation that you have to scoff at. We're talking $240 million over 4 seasons.
Look, Kyle Tucker has been really consistent, right? 5 straight seasons with 20 home runs. But, like, let's be honest, Dallas, you can go get a guy that hits 20 home runs. Like, you want guys that are driving in 130 homers, right? The numbers are good. I'm not going to debate whether they're good or not. But some will say, well, you know, he got injured last season. That suppressed his numbers. Are we sure he can stay healthy? Like, those are the concerns about Kyle Tucker. So
yeah, well, we also got to think about this. When you talk about overall value, you're talking about a player who is essentially a 5-win player and has been a 5-win player since 2021. And when you plug that kind of individual into a lineup where he is not bearing the responsibility of production, where there is a list of valuable and at times the most valuable players in the league that can support him, as well as other incredible supporting cast members, I think the pressure to have to go out and perform gets alleviated, maybe to an extent where he can quietly be that 4.5, 5.5 win player. And when you look up after another 4 years, if that's what you're getting out of Kyle Tucker and maybe hopefully a little more, are the Dodgers okay with it? I think the paycheck and the years tell you that they would be more than okay if that happens.
Well, and you know that if he does get injured, they can absorb the loss for a month or two, right? Because they're so deep. If you're the Mets right now, Dallas, you lost Edwin Diaz, a couple $1 million. Dodgers paying a little bit more. Dodgers paid Kyle Tucker a little bit more. How are you feeling right now if you're a Mets fan? And then for the Mets overall, when you got Steve Cohen out here tweeting that there's smoke, and you're thinking that, hey, you're going to get Kyle Tucker, and you think you got a deal that's going to happen soon, $50 million a year, and it doesn't happen. Where do the Mets go from here?
Well, first to address Mets fans or what that must feel like. You know, there's been a lot of conversation about what that clubhouse atmosphere is like, and whether or not that was something that Edwin Diaz parted ways with or a reason behind it. I think, honestly, it was just about the money and the lack of huge gap and the opportunity to go and play with a team that has a very clear and very defined championship window. And I think that cannot be said for what the New York Mets have going on right now. So from that perspective, I think if you're a Mets fan, you do start to wonder, what direction are we heading? And if we are talking about going out and getting these players and we just continue to miss and we're having a struggle retaining our players, there must be something deeper here at play. Because to have Uncle Stevie, as I affectionately refer to him as, Steve Cohen, tweeting, as you said, Hakeem, kind of tickling it, hey, there's smoke. And who could that smoke be around? I mean, would it have to be almost a Red Soxian pivot now to bringing in Framber Valdez? Is that the only way that you can make up for having watched Edwin Diaz leave town, and now you have also allowed Pete Alonso to walk, and you have also now just watched Kyle Tucker, a guy who would undoubtedly help that club? I made the argument that though Kyle Tucker could help that club, is that club a Kyle Tucker away from being a championship caliber team, a championship contender? I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Clearly, Kyle Tucker makes anybody better. He makes the Dodgers even better than they are. He would have made a huge impact in Toronto as well. But for the Mets fans to have this carrot sort of dangled in front of them and have it ripped away in the fashion that it has been, and I'm not saying that the Mets were the lead horse in this race for Kyle Tucker, but to think that you were in the conversation, that you were in that short list of suitors, and now you once again have been left kind of out in the cold, that's got to be a jagged pill to swallow.
Look, you want to compete, you got to spend money. We know that. I mean, that's how this is. There's no salary cap in Major League Baseball. We're not sure that there's going to be one day, even though that might be a sticking point with a strike looming. We'll wait to see on that, as my good friend David Sampson would say. But hey, as my good friend Dallas Braden would say, you hang it, we bang it. And that's what Kyle Tucker's probably going to do in Los Angeles multiple times next season. 4 years, $240 million. Hey, I'm going to continue to look for you on Baseball is Dead, one of the great podcasts on the market. Dallas, appreciate you taking time for us here on HQ, my friend.
Anything for you, Dream. Much appreciated as always. Enjoy the night, my man.
Dallas Braden here on CBS Sports HQ as the Dodgers get another deal done, a massive deal for Kyle Tucker, 4 years, $240 million. As you take a look at the projected payrolls in baseball in 2026, Dodgers coming in at more than $416 million, nearly $100 million more than the New York Mets. And, now the Mets will continue to wonder what could have been as they lose out on Kyle Tucker. And look, when a free agent signs, we will have instant reaction right here on CBS Sports HQ. Bo Bichette, Cody Bellinger, still the big names on the market, as well as starting pitcher Framber Valdez. When they sign, we will have reaction right here on HQ.